Are the 49ers back?
How do you make that statement after one game? I think it's one game. It was a good matchup. I think there's still the same issues we talked about. Those issues just don't go away magically in one game. I think
What are
they
the
have an
issues?
opportunity. I mean, it starts
Inconsistency, lack of
inconsistency,
motivation. Yeah.
beating themselves,
Beating
lack of
themselves.
bad situational football. All of
Yeah.
those things don't go away. I think this win
Slow
is a step
starts.
in the
Yeah.
I think it's the step in the right direction for them to
Right.
ultimately maybe be back or whatever back is. I think what they proved yesterday is that most people weren't wrong in their preseason evaluation of the 2021 Niners. Most people looked at their run game, they
They
looked
got
at
a lot
Kyle
of talent.
Shanahan, they looked at their defense, and they
Yeah.
said this team is really talented and they can be one of the best teams in the NFC.
Yes.
And we saw yesterday that this team is capable of putting together a game that can prove that. But the problem is that it's 1 out of 9 in the NFL season so far. And
Right.
I think we need to see some more consistency before we can say they're back. I think it's a great positive for them to beat the Rams. I also think the matchup played into it. They have a favorable stretch over the next few games that will also allow them to really be in the driver's seat for that
Yeah.
seventh playoff spot. And so I think we're going to learn a lot more about whether they're really bad, whether it was a one-off game the next few weeks. I'd love to sit here and say, man, they're back, they're running the table now, it's all over, blah blah blah. But I'm not ready to go there yet, especially when I look at how they match up with the Rams. Just the issues that we've seen. I mean, this is a team that's still lost 5 out of 7. And there's been some really, really bad football played over
Right.
that time period. There's been some ugly losses, like the one to the Colts and all of that. So I'd love, like, the fan in me just wants to come in here and be like, Grant, they're back, buddy. Just
They're gonna
watch
play
out. The
like
Niners
this
are
the
back. The
rest of the
Niners are
year.
back.
But my question is, why would anyone make that logical leap? Like the Niners did it in Week 10 against the Rams. This is how they're going to play the rest of the year. Like as you
Yeah.
said, they have the capability of playing this way. But my question keeps coming back to why did it take this long? And I asked Trent Williams, I asked I asked a few players on the team, George Kittle, and no one knew. They're like, I couldn't tell you. I don't know. And I
And
think that's a
sometimes I
pretty
just
legit
wonder if it's
answer.
just the fact that they match up well with the Rams. It's like,
Yeah.
the Rams with Jeff Fisher. Again, I hate that comparison because I really
Right.
don't like Jeff Fisher, but they used to have these one-off games where they used to look like one of the better teams in football against a lot of very good Seattle teams.
True.
And then they would be wetting the bed against some other team the very next game. So again, the NFL is a week-to-week league, and we saw that this week, right? We saw a lot of things that showed why any team is capable of beating any team on any given week, any given Sunday. That's the mantra, right? But I'm not ready to just say the Niners are back the way the Bulls are back, the Bulls are back, the Bulls are back because that's a Chicago reference, but I think very few people will get it. But
Okay.
the point is, I'm not ready to go there just because they've played so much bad football over the last. I mean, I had a lot of people. I'll say this: I had a lot of people in my Twitter mentions. I have a lot of people with these comments that are ready to write off Matthew Stafford after one bad game, and they're like, see, he's not that guy. One game. I know he's had 7 good ones, but he's not that guy based on one bad game. And it's kind of the same thing with the Niners. It's been 8 kind of miserable games to watch in terms of
Right.
if you thought what this team could have been and then what they actually are. It's really difficult to then look at this one-off game versus a team they match up really well and just have the total conviction that everything is going to go in the right direction. This might be honestly like, do you remember in 2014 the Niners started off strong and they had the quote unquote turning point and the New Orleans 4th and whatever. Kaepernick converted it to Crabtree.
Right.
And
That's
people
right.
thought
I was
immediately,
there.
okay, this is when
I
they're
was
going to
there.
make their
Yeah.
run. They beat New Orleans in New Orleans.
It's
This is
true.
their run. All these issues that
Lost
they've
4 or
had all
5 in the
season, they're
season.
gone.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
then they lost, and then everything just fell apart from
That
there.
was it.
And
Yep.
so I'm not
They
saying
lost at
they're
home
the
on
20.
Thanksgiving, and that was it. Yeah. Yep.
Yeah,
I
I'm not
remember that.
saying again, I'm not saying they're the 2014 Niners. I'm simply just drawing a parallel to
Yes. They had
these
some
type of
wins like that
emotional
this
football
yep.
games. It's really hard to say anything when they're one-off games. You
It's
have
just
to see
troubling to me
consistency.
that it took them falling to 3-5 and Steve Young and Jerry Rice calling them out to play the way they should play every week. If you have a professional standard, the way that Jerry Rice and Steve Young expect you to, the way that they did, you play like this every week. But it took that. And so what the Niners need to sustain it is actual player leadership, the way that Steve Young and Jerry Rice were talking about, like dogs. And Jimmy Ward did it this week. Is it going to be him every week? Is someone else going to step up next week? Or is this a one-off? Because again, this is a team that lost to Colt McCoy 8 days ago. So they certainly could go to Jacksonville on a short week at 10 a.m. and lose to Trevor Lawrence. They could definitely do that because they beat themselves.
Jacksonville is starting to compete too. They're not the pushover they were
Yeah,
at the
they just
beginning of the
really
season.
went toe-to-toe with the Bills, right?
Yeah, and they competed with Indianapolis.
Yeah. So, you got to play just as hard against a team that's not in your division, that you don't know as well, when you're not on national television and Steve Young isn't breathing down your neck. I mean, Steve Young was there. He could have ran on the field and fired Kyle Shanahan himself if he needed to. This is a little bit different. Now you're in Jacksonville where no one watches. You're basically like, the game didn't happen. Can you get up for this game? 10 a.m., short week? This is going to take all of your professionalism right now. Do it again. And then you got the Vikings at home. Do it again.
Look, Jacksonville is not an overly talented team, even though they're playing better, right? But I think if the Niners manage to beat them, even if they beat them and it's ugly, it would be a great win. And that would be, to me, a bigger step in the right direction, because you come off the emotional high of beating a division rival, a team that you own, a team that you match up really well with, and then you're able to go cross-country and you're able to even win an ugly game, because good teams manage to not lose to a Jacksonville. They manage to win no matter what. And if they're able to do that, that's when I will start to feel a little bit more like, hey, they got a good shot. I don't know if I would say, because I don't even know what back is. Is back just the 2019 Niners? Because back, to me, from the football I've seen the last 15 years of my life, would be the Niners are just back to being a team that, hovers around the 8th to the 15th draft pick every single season. But jokes aside, I think that it would be impressive no matter what if they manage to beat Jacksonville handedly. I think that's where we need to say, okay, this team really is finding something. Because again,
But again, 2019, they had a standard that they could pretty much keep going weekly. I mean, they never wavered from it until the fourth quarter of the Super Bowl. They need to do it more than 2 games. It has to be the rest of the season, because they don't have any margin for error. They can't, honestly, if they miss the playoffs, they're going to look back to that game against Colt McCoy like, how did we lose to Colt McCoy? That was a golden opportunity. That was a layup. You let it go. No more. You got to be, you got to run the table.
We have 2 different games, right? The last 2 games are basically going to tell the story of the 2021 49ers. If they make the playoffs, we will point to this Rams game as the turning point. If they miss the playoffs, we'll point to the Cardinals game as where it all fell apart. So, I mean, it'll be interesting to see how it plays out.